A little girl interrupted the Boston Don's dinner, and the mark on her wrist broke him. In a private room beneath the North End, Vincent Rourke sat surrounded by men who feared him, guarded by doors no stranger should ever cross. Outside, winter rain scraped against the brick alleys. Inside, power moved in whispers, and every man knew one rule: nobody entered without permission. Then the door opened. A 7-year-old girl stepped in, soaked, shaking, and holding a secret too heavy for her small hands. She did not ask for money. She did not beg for mercy. She raised her wrist and showed him the one thing that could destroy his silence. Stay with this story, because it is not just about crime. It is about grief, blood, love, and whether a dangerous man can still become worthy. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. The room stayed frozen after Vincent Rourke said everyone out. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Sean Kelleher stared at him from the far side of the table, his gray eyes narrowing, not in disobedience, but in calculation. Eli Brooks kept one hand beneath the table where Vince knew a pistol rested against the underside of the chair. The 2 guards by the door looked at the little girl, then at Vince, then back again, as if their training had failed to prepare them for a child with rainwater dripping from her sleeves. Vince did not raise his voice. Now. Chairs moved. Shoes whispered against the polished floor. Sean rose last, slow and careful, the way a man rose when he understood a room had changed shape but did not yet know why. His gaze touched the little girl's wrist, then Vince's face. "Boss," Sean said quietly. Vince looked at him. That was enough. Sean nodded once and walked out with the others. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than a gunshot. Then there were only 2 of them. Vincent Rourke. The man half of Boston crossed the street to avoid, and a little girl in a wet red coat standing 12 feet away from him with her sleeve pushed up and a crescent mark on her wrist. The silence between them was not empty. It was crowded with things Vince had buried. The girl lowered her arms slowly, as though the effort had taken something out of her. Her fingers curled around the edge of her sleeve. She did not cry. That was the first thing that troubled him. Children cried when they were cold, scared, hungry, lost. She looked like all 4, yet she held herself still with the terrible discipline of someone who had learned that falling apart made adults nervous. Vince stayed seated because standing would have frightened her. He kept his hands visible on the table. "What is your name, Lily?" she said. "Lily. What Lily Mercer?" The last name moved through him like an old song played in the wrong room. Mercer. He had not spoken it in 8 years, had not allowed anyone around him to speak it either. Men in his world learned quickly which names were safe and which ones could get them hurt. Hannah Mercer had become one of those names, though, not because she had betrayed him, not because she had crossed him, because once for 14 months she had made him believe he might have been someone else. Vince looked at the child again. The pale face, the wet lashes, the small mouth pressed tight, the chin lifted with stubborn courage. Hannah's chin. His stomach tightened. "How old are you, Lily?" 7. He heard the number, but for a moment his mind refused to accept it. 7. 7 meant Hannah had left Boston carrying more than her suitcase. 7 meant she had walked away from him with his child inside her. 7 meant every year since then, while Vince had built his empire out of fear and silence, somewhere a girl with his blood had been learning to walk, to speak, to write her name. Somewhere Hannah had been raising her alone. Vince reached for his glass, then stopped before touching it. "Your mother told you to come here." Lily nodded. When her small throat moved, before she got too tired to talk, the words landed gently. That made them worse. Vince leaned back in his chair. The amber light cut sharp shadows along his face. He could hear the restaurant beyond the walls, now muted and distant. Forks against plates. A muffled laugh from another room. Normal life continuing with insulting ease. When did she die? Lily blinked once. 9 days ago. Vince stared at her. 9 days. For 9 days Hannah Mercer had been gone from the world, and Boston had not changed its weather. The harbor had kept moving. Men had kept lying. Money had kept changing hands. Vince had attended meetings, signed papers, threatened cowards, drank coffee, slept badly, woke before dawn. 9 days, and he had felt nothing, because he had known nothing. "What happened to her?" he asked. Lily looked down at her shoes. One lace had come undone and dragged a dark line of water across the floor. She was sick. What kind of sick? The kind people whisper about. That answer cracked something in him. Lily reached into the pocket of her coat. Her fingers were red from cold. She pulled out a folded photograph, damp at the corners, protected inside a clear plastic sleeve that had been sealed with tape. She took 2 steps forward and placed it on the end of the table, then stepped back quickly. Vince picked it up. The photograph showed a younger version of himself standing outside a cafe in Cambridge. He remembered the day with painful clarity. Early fall, a gray sweater. Hannah behind the camera laughing because he refused to smile properly. She had told him he looked like a man being forced to attend his own birthday party. He had almost smiled for her. Almost. His thumb turned the photograph over. There, in Hannah's handwriting, were the words that stopped the room again. "If anything happens to me, Lily, find Vincent Rourke. Show him your wrist. Beneath all the darkness, there is still a man inside him." Vince read it once. Then again. He could see Hannah's hand in every curve of the letters. She wrote with pressure as if the pen had personally offended her. Even in ink, she sounded stubborn. Lily watched him. "My mom said you would understand." Vince folded the photograph along its original crease and set it carefully on the table in front of him. "Did she tell you who I was?" Lily hesitated. "She said you were important. That is not an answer. She said some people were scared of you." Vince's mouth tightened. "And were you?" Lily looked at the guards beyond the door, though she could not see them. "I was more scared of not finding you." He closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, the room had changed again. The table, the whiskey, the low light, the expensive wood. All of it looked obscene beside the child standing there with trembling knees and a dead woman's instructions in her pocket. "Come here," he said softer this time. Lily did not move. Vince understood. Trust was not something children owed strangers, especially strangers like him. He reached for his left cuff. Slowly, so she could see every movement, he unfastened the button and rolled the sleeve back. His wrist came into the light. The crescent mark sat there dark against his skin. Same curve, same placement, same shape like a secret stamped through blood. Lily stared at it. Her lips parted. "So it's true," she whispered. Vince had no words ready for that. Men like him kept words as weapons polished and loaded. But this child had walked into his locked room and emptied him with one sentence. He pushed the chair nearest the door back with his foot. "Sit down." Lily sat on the edge, not fully committing her weight, ready to flee if the world turned sharp. "Are you hungry?" She looked like she wanted to lie. "Yes." Vince pressed the service button near the wall. A voice answered immediately. "Yes, Mr. Rourke. Bring soup, bread, milk, something warm." "No one enters without knocking." "Yes, sir." While they waited, Lily folded her hands in her lap. Her nails were bitten short. There was a hospital bracelet still around her wrist, the paper worn soft at the edges. Vince noticed a bruise near the inside of her elbow where an IV had probably been taped. "You were at the hospital with Mom. For how long?" "A lot." Children measured time in feelings, not calendars. Vince looked away before his face could betray him. 8 years earlier, Hannah Mercer had worked at a free clinic in Dorchester 3 nights a week, though Vince had never understood why. She had been a nurse then, 27 sharp-eyed and too principled for any room he put her in. Their first conversation had happened because one of Vince's men had stumbled into the clinic bleeding from a knife wound, and using a fake name so poorly, Hannah threatened to stitch his mouth shut before she touched his side. Vince had arrived 20 minutes later to clean up the situation. Hannah had looked him over once and said, "You must be the reason everyone suddenly forgot how to breathe." He remembered that clearly, the way she stood with her arms crossed, dark hair pulled back, blood on one sleeve, no fear in her face, just irritation. "You know who I am?" he had asked. "I know the type. There are types, men who think silence makes them powerful." He should have left. Instead, he had stayed. That was Hannah's gift. She made him stay in rooms where he could not hide. For 14 months, she had been the only clean thing in his life, not innocent. Hannah was too smart for innocence. She knew there was blood around him even when she refused to ask for details. She knew money came from places money did not belong. She knew men lowered their eyes when Vince passed because they had learned the cost of looking too long. Still, she had loved him. Or something close enough to love that Vince had mistaken it for salvation. They met in quiet places. coffee shops far from his territory, her apartment with the broken radiator, his car parked near the river at midnight while the city lights shivered in black water. She would talk about patients' families' impossible rent kids who came to the clinic hungry. He would talk less. She would notice anyway. Once, after he came to her door with split knuckles and a cut across his cheekbone, she made him sit at her kitchen table while she cleaned the wound. "Tell me it was necessary," she said. He looked at her. It was. That was too fast. "You want me to lie slower, I want you to hate it." He had not answered. She pressed gauze to his face harder than necessary. "That is what scares me about you, Vince. Not that you can hurt people, lots of men can hurt people, it's that you can convince yourself it was the only way." He remembered being angry. He remembered wanting to leave. He remembered staying because her hand was on his face and she was the only person alive who touched him like she did not expect him to bite. Then one morning she vanished. No screaming fight. No note on the kitchen table. No slammed door. Her apartment had been cleared with careful precision. Her phone disconnected. Her landlord paid in cash for the final month. Friends from the clinic said they did not know where she had gone, and Vince believed some of them were lying, but not enough to break them for it. He searched quietly at first, then thoroughly. For 6 months, men checked bus stations, hospitals, employment records, leases, old contacts, family names, anything connected to Hannah Mercer. Nothing. She had stepped out of his life like a match flame pinched between wet fingers. Finally, Sean had said the thing no one else dared to say. Maybe she left because she knew you would find her if she only ran halfway. So Vince stopped. Not because he stopped loving her, because he did. The food arrived after a knock. Vince stood before the server entered and took the tray himself at the door. The young man saw nothing beyond Vince's shoulder, which was the safest thing he could have seen. Vince placed the bowl in front of Lily. Tomato soup, warm bread, a glass of milk. She stared at it like she did not want to appear too eager. "Eat," he said. That was all the permission she needed. She ate carefully but fast. Too fast. She tore the bread into pieces and dipped each one into the soup, eyes lowered, shoulders still tight. Hunger had its own manners. Vince had seen it in men fresh from prison, in women waiting outside clinics, in boys recruited too young to know they were disposable. He had never seen it in his own child. His own child. The words did not fit in him. When the bowl was nearly empty, Lily wiped her mouth with a napkin and looked toward the door. "Is that man angry?" "Which man?" "The older one, with gray hair." "Sean." She nodded. "No, he worries. About me. About everything." That seemed to satisfy her. "Who is Mrs. Price?" Vince asked. "Our neighbor. She has you now." Lily nodded again. "She said she could keep me for a few days. But she's old and her hands hurt. A lady from the office came and said there were forms." "What office? I don't know." "A woman with a blue coat. She talked to Mrs. Price in the hallway. She said I might have to go somewhere else." Vince's jaw hardened. "Did your mother have family number friends some? But they have kids, or they live far away." "Mom said we were a little team. A little team." Hannah would have said that. She would have made loneliness sound like courage so Lily would not feel the shape of what they lacked. "Do you want to go back to Mrs. Price tonight?" Vince asked. Lily gripped the napkin. "Do I have to? No." Her eyes moved to his face. "Are you going to send me to the place for kids? No." The answer came before thought, before strategy, before risk, before Sean's warnings, legal complications, enemies, bloodlines, headlines, police leverage war. It rose out of him clean and immediate. "No." Lily stared at him as if she had been waiting days to breathe. "You don't know me," she said. "I know enough. My mom said you might not want me." The words struck him with such force that he leaned back. Hannah had thought that, or feared it, or prepared Lily for the chance. Vince could almost hear her voice, soft and tired, trying to make abandonment survivable before it happened. He looked at Lily's wrist, at the mark that had traveled through his family like a curse. She was wrong about that. Lily's eyes filled again, but the tears stayed balanced on the edge. Vince stood. "We are leaving. Where, my house? Is it far? No. Do you have kids there? No. Do you have a dog? No." She considered that. "Do you have cereal?" He almost smiled again. "I can get cereal." Lily slipped from the chair. The red coat hung heavy around her knees. Vince reached for it, then stopped. He did not know whether touching her would frighten her. She solved the problem by looking up and offering one sleeve. He helped her into it carefully. The hallway outside the private room had been emptied. Of course it had. Sean stood near the elevator with Eli and the guards. His eyes dropped to Lily, then lifted to Vince. Vince did not explain. "Car," he said. Sean nodded. They moved through the restaurant by the back way. In the kitchen, cooks turned away without being told. At the service exit, rain fell hard into the alley, silver under the security light. Vince opened his coat and shielded Lily as they crossed the black SUV. She climbed inside and buckled herself with practiced concentration. Vince sat beside her in the back. Sean took the front passenger seat. The driver pulled away from the curb tires hissing over wet pavement. For a few blocks, no one spoke. Lily watched Boston slide past the window. Neon signs blurred in the rain. A man under an umbrella hurried across Hanover Street. Somewhere a siren rose and faded. The city looked normal, which seemed impossible. Vince took out his phone. His first call was to Sean's private line, though Sean sat 10 feet away. That was how they spoke when the driver did not need to hear. Sean answered without turning. "Yes. I need everything on Hannah Mercer. Last address, medical history, death certificate, employment, any lawyer, any social worker, anything involving the child." Sean's reflection in the windshield did not move. By morning before morning. Understood. Vince ended the call and made another. This one went to Caroline Vance, a family attorney whose office handled delicate matters for men who preferred clean paperwork over public questions. She answered on the third ring voice, sharp with sleep. "Vince, I need emergency guardianship papers prepared for a minor." A pause. What minor? Lily Mercer, 7 years old, mother deceased. No known living relatives. "Are you related to the child?" Vince looked at Lily. She had pressed her forehead lightly to the glass and was tracing raindrops with one finger. "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. "I need documentation. You'll have it. Vincent, this is not a parking ticket. I know what it is." "Do you?" His voice lowered. "Caroline," she exhaled. "Send me what you have. I'll start the petition tonight." The third call was to Mrs. Evelyn Price. Lily recited the number from memory in a small voice, careful with each digit. Vince dialed. The woman who answered sounded older than he expected, and tired in a way sleep would not fix. "Hello, Mrs. Price? My name is Vincent Rourke. Lily Mercer is with me." A sharp breath. "Is she safe?" "Yes." Thank God. The sincerity in that nearly undid him. "She said you have her belongings." "Yes. A backpack, some clothes, her mother's things. Not much. I didn't know what to do. The woman from Child Services said she would come back tomorrow. She does not need to come back." Silence. Then carefully, "Are you family?" Vince looked at Lily again. "Yes." Mrs. Price began to cry quietly, ashamed of the sound. Hannah said someone might come. Near the end, she kept saying there was someone, but then she would get scared and stop talking. I thought maybe it was the fever. It wasn't. She loved that child more than anything, I know. "No," Mrs. Price said, and for the first time her voice hardened. "You don't. But maybe you can learn." Vince accepted the blow because it was deserved. "I'll send someone for Lily's things. I won't give them to just anyone." "Good." That answer seemed to calm her. "I'll pack what I can. Thank you." He ended the call and set the phone on his knee. Lily was looking at him now. Is Mrs. Price mad? No. She cries when she's tired. So do a lot of people. Do you? Vince glanced at her. No. She seemed to think about that longer than he liked. Maybe you're not tired enough. Sean made a sound from the front seat that might have been a cough. Vince looked out the window so Lily would not see the corner of his mouth move. The SUV climbed toward Beacon Hill, where the streets narrowed and the old brick houses stood close together like rich men guarding secrets. Vince's townhouse waited behind black iron 4 stories of red brick and dark windows, beautiful in the way a locked box could be beautiful. The driver stopped at the curb. Sean stepped out first, scanning the street. Vince opened the door on Lily's side. Rain had softened to mist. Lily stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the house. "You live here?" "Yes. Alone." "Yes." She nodded as though confirming something she had already suspected. It looks lonely. Vince had paid more money than most families would see in a lifetime for that house. He had reinforced its doors, hidden steel beneath old wood, installed cameras in places even his own men did not know. He had made it secure, untouchable, quiet. No one had ever called it lonely. No one had ever been right so quickly. Inside the entryway smelled faintly of leather wood polish and rain. Lily stepped in carefully as if afraid to leave marks. Her small shoes squeaked on the floor. Vince watched her take in the high ceilings, the dark staircase, the absence of photographs, the absence of mess, the absence of life. He had never noticed how much was missing until she looked at it. Sean entered behind them and closed the door. "I'll make the calls," he said. Vince nodded. Sean's gaze moved to Lily. For a moment, something almost gentle crossed his face. "Miss Mercer," he said. Lily looked up at him. "Are you the man who worries?" Sean blinked once. Vince turned away before his face betrayed him again. Sean cleared his throat. "I suppose I am." Lily nodded. "My mom said worriers are useful." Sean looked at Vince, then back at Lily. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." She was. The answer was immediate, absolute. Vince felt it settle over the room. He led Lily upstairs to the second floor. The guest room had white walls, white sheets, a dresser, a lamp, and nothing else. It was the kind of room prepared for visitors who never stayed long. Lily stood in the doorway. "This is yours for now," Vince said. She touched the blanket on the bed. "For now" is like temporary. He remembered what she had said in the restaurant, and this time he did not make the same mistake. "This is yours," he corrected. She looked at him. For how long Vince had made men disappear for asking fewer questions. This one left him defenseless. "As long as you need it." Lily set one hand on the bedpost. "My mom said needing things makes people leave." Vince crouched slowly so his eyes were level with hers. The movement felt strange. He could not remember the last time he had lowered himself for anyone. Not me. She studied his face with an old sadness that did not belong on a child. "You don't know that yet." He did not answer too quickly this time. "No," he said. "I don't. But I am saying it anyway." For the first time since she entered the restaurant, Lily's shoulders dropped by the smallest measure. Vince stood. "There is a bathroom through that door. I'll find dry clothes. I have pajamas at Mrs. Price's. Then tonight you can use something here." He found a clean white t-shirt in a drawer from a guest set no one had used. It was too large, but soft. He placed it on the bed and turned away while she changed in the bathroom. When she came out, the shirt fell past her knees. Her wet hair had been combed with her fingers. Without the red coat, she looked smaller, far too small for the amount of grief she carried. "Do I sleep now?" she asked. "If you want. What do you do?" At night, she nodded. "Work. Always, usually." She looked around the bare room. "My mom used to read until I fell asleep when she wasn't too sick." Vince felt the sentence reach back through time and find every version of himself that had failed them. "I don't have children's books. That's okay." But it was not okay. He knew that by the way she said it. He moved toward the door. "I'll leave the hall light on." Lily sat on the edge of the bed. "Mr. Rourke." The name sounded wrong in her mouth. He turned. "Yes. Did my mom love you?" The question filled the room. Vince could have lied, could have softened it, could have said adults are complicated, which was what cowards said when truth had teeth. Instead, he looked at the child Hannah had hidden and saved. "Yes," he said. Lily's fingers curled into the sheet. "Did you love her?" The hallway behind him was dark. Downstairs, men were already moving because of his orders. Files were being opened, calls were being made. The machinery of his life had begun turning around this child, around this dead woman, around the past that had walked back into his private room wearing untied sneakers. Vince looked at Lily. "Yes." She nodded once as if the answer mattered but did not surprise her. "Good night," she said. "Good night, Lily." He closed the door halfway, leaving a wedge of light across the floor. Downstairs, Sean waited in the study with his phone in one hand and questions in his eyes. Vince walked past the whiskey cabinet without stopping and stood at the window looking out at the wet street where the lamps burned gold against the mist. Behind him, Sean spoke quietly. "Is she yours?" Vince did not turn around. "Yes." "You're certain?" Vince saw the crescent mark in his mind. Hannah's handwriting, Lily's chin lifting so she would not cry. "Yes." Sean was silent for a long moment. Then he said the thing Vince already knew. Then everything changes. Vince looked up toward the second floor where a little girl who had crossed a city in the rain was lying in a stranger's house with a dead mother's name on her lips. "No," he said. "Everything already did." From upstairs came the faintest sound of a floorboard shifting, then silence again. Vince stood very still listening, and for the first time in years the house did not feel empty. For the first time in years the house did not feel empty. That was what troubled Vincent Rourke most. The silence was still there. It sat in the corners, pressed against the tall windows, moved through the dark wood halls like smoke. But now it had something inside it. A breath upstairs. A small pair of wet shoes beside the door. A white shirt missing from one of his guest drawers. A child sleeping under his roof because a dead woman had trusted him at the edge of her life. Vince stood in his study until the rain stopped. Sean Kelleher sat across from him, phone in one hand, black folder in the other. The folder had arrived just before dawn, carried by a man who knew better than to knock twice. Sean placed it on the desk without opening it. "Hannah Mercer," Sean said. Vince looked at the name typed on the label. For a moment he did not touch it. He had signed orders that made grown men disappear. He had opened envelopes that contained photographs, threats, wire transcripts, names of informants, names of dead men. None of them had made his hand pause over paper. This one did. Finally, he opened the folder. The first page was simple. Birth certificate. Hannah Louise Mercer, born in Burlington, Vermont. Father dead before she turned 16. Mother dead 2 years later. No siblings. No living grandparents. An aunt listed once on an old school form, deceased. No safety net. Vince read the line again. No living relatives. Hannah had been alone long before she met him. She had carried that loneliness so quietly he had mistaken it for independence. The next pages gave him the rest in clean, brutal language. Nursing license, clinic work in Dorchester, volunteer hours, lease records in Cambridge, then nothing for several months after she disappeared from Boston. Then a new address in Burlington, employment at a community health center, a second job at a women's shelter, annual income lower than what Vince spent maintaining one armored car. He turned the page. Lily Grace Mercer, born at Lakeview Medical Center. Mother Hannah Louise Mercer. Father unknown, unknown. Vince stared at the word until the letters lost shape. Unknown meant Hannah had stood in a hospital room exhausted and alone holding their daughter and chosen to leave him blank. Not because he meant nothing, because he meant danger. Because his name on paper would have been a door any enemy could open. Sean watched him from the chair. "She protected the child," Sean said. Vince did not answer. The medical records were thinner than they should have been and heavier than anything else in the folder. Hannah had been diagnosed 18 months earlier. Ovarian cancer, surgery, treatment, remission noted, then recurrence. Hospice care approved. Final nurse visit 9 days before. Vince kept reading until the words blurred. Sean's voice came low. "She died at home." Vince closed the folder. His study had no photographs, no awards, no trophies, nothing that could be used to understand him. The walls were lined with law books he rarely opened, and old maps of Boston marked in ways only 3 men alive understood. It was a room built for strategy, not grief. Grief entered anyway. "She never asked for anything," Vince said. Sean leaned back slightly. "Hannah. She could have called. She could have asked for money, doctors, anything." Sean was quiet long enough that Vince looked up. "What she probably knew you would give it," Sean said, "and everything else with it." That landed where Sean intended. Vince stood and walked to the window. Morning had begun to pale the street. The brick townhouses across from his looked washed clean by rain. A woman in a wool coat walked a small dog along the sidewalk. A delivery truck idled at the corner. Normal people beginning normal days. Behind him, Sean said, "If anyone learns about Lily, she becomes leverage." Vince turned. "No one learns. That is not a plan. That is a wish. It is an order." Sean's jaw tightened, but he did not look away. He was one of the only men who still could. Orders leak. Drivers talk. Lawyers keep files. Schools ask questions. Children make friends. She is not a briefcase you can lock in a room. Vince's eyes went cold. "Careful." "I am being careful," Sean said. "That is why I am saying it now, before fear starts making your decisions for you." Vince walked back to the desk. "She stays. I did not say she should not." "Then say what you mean." Sean folded his hands. I mean, the girl cannot exist in your world and survive it. So either you keep her outside it completely, or you change the shape of the world around you. Vince almost laughed. There was no humor in it. Change the world, or lose her to it. The house creaked above them. Both men looked up. A soft footstep crossed the second floor. Then another. Vince moved before he knew he was moving. He left Sean in the study and climbed the stairs quietly. At the top he found Lily standing in the hallway, swallowed by the white T-shirt hair tangled around her face. Her eyes were open but heavy with sleep. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. The question stopped him halfway up the last step. "No, I heard voices. That was Sean, the man who worries." "Yes." She rubbed one eye with the heel of her hand. "Is he worried about me?" Vince reached the landing and kept distance between them. "He worries because that is his job. What is your job?" The answer should have been easy. Men in Boston could have answered for him. Owner, boss, devil, protector, criminal, king, monster. Vince looked at the child in his hallway. "I am working that out." Lily accepted this as if adults said strange things all the time, which they did. "I'm hungry." It was the first ordinary sentence she had spoken, and it felt like mercy. Vince led her downstairs to the kitchen. The kitchen had been designed by people who believed money could imitate warmth. Marble counters, copper pans that had never touched food, a refrigerator so clean it looked staged. Vince knew where the coffee was. He knew where the whiskey was. He had no idea whether he owned cereal. He opened one cabinet, plates, another, glasses, a third. Spices arranged alphabetically by a housekeeper who came twice a week and never asked why the pantry was mostly empty. Lily climbed onto a stool at the island and watched him. "You don't cook," she said. "I can cook." "What can you cook?" Vince opened the refrigerator. Eggs, mustard, 2 lemons, a carton of milk, something green in a container he did not trust. Eggs. How he looked over his shoulder. In a pan. Lily considered him with grave concern. "Do you have bread?" "Yes, peanut butter." He searched and found a jar in the back of the pantry unopened. "Jelly." Another search. "Strawberry." Lily slid down from the stool and came around the island. "You need a knife." "I know that. Not a sharp one." "I know that too." She gave him a look that said she did not believe him. He found a butter knife. She took it from him carefully, as if accepting a tool from a man who might misuse it. Then she pulled a stool to the counter and climbed up. Vince moved forward instinctively, one hand half lifted in case she fell. "I'm okay," she said. She spread peanut butter on one slice of bread, then the other. "Both sides," Vince asked. "So the jelly doesn't make it soggy. Is that a rule?" "It's a good rule," she added. Jelly pressed the slices together, cut the sandwich into 2 uneven triangles, and slid one half toward him. "You have to try it. I am not hungry." "My mom said people say that when they don't want to be included." Vince looked at the sandwich, then at Lily. He picked it up and took a bite. She waited. "Well," she asked, "it is acceptable." "That's what I was going to say." There it was again, the almost smile. It came from somewhere unfamiliar and vanished before it fully formed, but Lily noticed. Her face changed for half a second, not joy exactly, but recognition. Like a bird hearing another bird far away. Sean appeared in the doorway, silent as ever. Vince turned. Sean looked at the sandwich in Vince's hand, then at Lily on the stool. Nothing. Vince's stare sharpened. Sean cleared his throat. "Caroline Vance called. She can file for emergency guardianship today, but she needs proof of relationship." Lily stopped chewing. Vince saw it. Sean saw it too late. "She does not need to hear this," Vince said. Lily put the sandwich down. "Does that mean you have to prove I'm yours?" The kitchen went quiet. Vince pulled out the stool across from her and sat. He did it slowly, deliberately making himself smaller in a room where he had always been the largest thing. "It means there are papers adults like to argue over. Because of me, no. Because of Mom, no. Then because of you." He did not lie. "Yes." Lily looked at the sandwich. "If the papers say I'm not, do I leave?" Vince felt Sean shift in the doorway. "No," Vince said. "But what if they say I have to? Then the papers are wrong." She looked up at him. "You can do that for you, yes." Sean said nothing, but Vince felt the warning in his silence. Promises were dangerous. Promises to children were sacred. Vince had made very few sacred things in his life. Now he had made one before breakfast. After Lily finished eating, Sean arranged for Mrs. Price to send her belongings through Owen Pike, a former Marine who had driven for Vince's family before Vince had inherited anything but enemies. Owen arrived mid-morning with 2 duffel bags, a backpack shaped like a faded purple cat, and a cardboard box sealed with packing tape. Lily stood at the bottom of the stairs when he brought them in. Her face went still. "That's Mom's box," she said. Vince looked at Owen. Owen set it down gently. "No one opened it," he said. Lily crossed the entryway and placed both hands on the box. For the first time she looked exactly 7. Small. Lost. Afraid that cardboard and tape were all that remained of the person who had been her whole world. Vince wanted to tell her she did not have to open it now. He wanted to give an order that could make grief wait. But Dr. Maya Ellison had not yet entered their lives, and even without her, some instinct warned him not to command this pain. So he stood there. Lily whispered, "Can it go in my room?" Vince picked up the box himself. It was not heavy. That made it worse. Upstairs, the guest room looked less bare once Lily's things entered it. A pair of worn sneakers by the closet, a stack of folded clothes in the dresser, a toothbrush by the sink, 3 books on the nightstand, a stuffed rabbit with one bent ear placed carefully against the pillow. The box went in the corner. Lily did not open it. That afternoon, Vince made more calls, a pediatrician who still made house visits and knew how to forget addresses, a school administrator in Brookline who owed Caroline Vance a favor, a trust manager who could move tuition through clean channels, a security consultant outside Vince's organization because Sean was right about one thing. Men who worked in his world talked, and men who talked could be bought. By evening, there were new rules written in Vince's mind. No one from the cruise entered the house without clearance. No meetings after 5 unless unavoidable. No weapons left in common rooms. No mention of Lily in texts, calls, ledgers, or jokes. Her name became the most protected word in Boston. Lily knew none of this. She sat at the kitchen table with a pencil Sean had found in a drawer and a stack of printer paper. She drew quietly while Vince reviewed documents at the far end of the table. He had tried to work in his study, but after 15 minutes he found himself checking the hallway camera. After 20, he came back to the kitchen and pretended it was because the light was better. Lily drew a square house with smoke coming from the chimney. Vince looked at it longer than he meant to. "Is that your old house nor Mrs. Price's building now?" "What is it?" She shaded the roof. "Just a house. There were 2 windows, a crooked door, and a tree beside it. No people." Vince returned to his papers. After a while, Lily asked, "Why don't you have pictures?" He looked up. "What on the walls?" "There are no pictures. I never needed any." Lily's pencil paused. "My mom said pictures are proof something happened." Vince glanced toward the empty hallway, the polished walls, the rooms full of expensive furniture and no memory. She may have been right. "Don't you want proof?" The question was innocent. That did not make it gentle. Vince thought of the photograph in his jacket pocket. Younger Vince outside a cafe, Hannah behind the camera. A life that had happened then vanished because no one had been there to keep proof except the woman who ran. "I don't have much worth proving," he said. Lily went back to drawing. "I can make some." 2 hours later, the first picture appeared on the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like a wine bottle from some event Vince did not remember attending. It was the square house with the crooked door. Vince saw it when he reached for a bottle of water. He stared. Lily stood beside him, holding another drawing against her chest. "You don't have to keep it there," she said. He looked down at her. "It can stay. It's not very good. It can still stay." She nodded, satisfied, and went back to the table. That night, Lily did not sleep. Vince knew because his security monitor showed her door opening at 1:17 in the morning. He was in the study reading Hannah's medical file again, punishing himself with details. The screen on his desk showed Lily step into the hallway and sit at the top of the stairs. She did not call for him. She did not cry. She just sat with her arms around her knees, looking down into the dark house. Vince stood, then stopped. He could frighten men into obedience. He could extract truth from liars. He could enter any room in his city and own the air inside it. But he did not know how to approach a child who could not sleep because her mother was dead. So he did nothing. He watched until she went back to bed at 1:43. The next night, she came out again. 1:22. This time, Vince opened the hall closet and found a folded blanket, soft gray wool unused. He carried it upstairs after Lily returned to her room and placed it on the top step. No note, no explanation. In the morning, the blanket was folded neatly on the same step. Lily did not mention it at breakfast. Neither did he. The next night, he placed it there before midnight. At 1:19, she came out, wrapped herself in it, and sat on the step for 20 minutes. Vince watched from the study, one hand pressed against his mouth. By the fourth night, the blanket had become theirs. Not comfort exactly, not yet, a signal. I know you are there. I will not make you ask. On Friday morning, Owen drove Lily and Vince to the Brookline School for a private meeting before classes began. Vince wore a charcoal suit and stayed in the back of the headmistress's office while Caroline Vance spoke in calm, legal phrases. Lily sat beside him in a navy dress Mrs. Price had packed, and shoes that pinched her toes, though she refused to say so. The headmistress, a woman with silver glasses and the careful smile of someone used to wealthy families, looked at Lily kindly. "And what do you like to read?" Lily glanced at Vince, then back. Bird books. Bird books. My mom said birds are proof the world keeps going even when people are sad. The headmistress's smile softened into something real. Vince looked at the window. Outside, children crossed the courtyard with backpacks and bright coats. They laughed too loudly. They pushed each other. They complained about homework. They moved with the careless confidence of children who believed someone would be there at the end of the day. Lily watched them without envy, but with caution, as if joy were a language she understood but did not yet speak. On the ride home, she was quiet. "Do you not like it?" Vince asked. "It's nice. That is not what I asked." She looked out the window. "What if they ask about my dad?" Vince felt the word enter the car and take up space between them. "What do you want to say? I don't know." He had answers ready. Simple ones, safe ones, private ones. But Lily was not asking for a script. She was asking where he fit in the story of her life. Vince looked at the passing brownstones, the wet sidewalks, the city that had taken everything from Hannah and given her child back to him too late. "You can say whatever feels true." Lily turned from the window. "What if I don't know what's true yet?" "Then say that." She nodded slowly. At home, she changed out of the dress and put on leggings and a sweater with a small hole near the cuff. Vince saw the shoes left by the door and noticed the red marks on her heels. He said nothing then. He called Caroline later and asked what children needed for school besides books. Caroline laughed once before she realized he was serious. By evening, 3 bags from a children's store arrived. Coats, socks, shoes, pajamas, hairbrushes, notebooks, colored pencils, a lunchbox with birds printed on it because Vince had remembered. Lily stood in the foyer as Owen carried everything in. "Is all that for me?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you need things." She touched the handle of the lunchbox. "My mom used to say needing things is expensive." Vince crouched in front of her. "Then it is good I can afford it." She looked at him for a long second. That was almost funny. "It was not meant to be. That makes it funnier." He shook his head, but warmth moved through him before he could stop it. Later, after dinner, Sean came by with papers. He stopped at the refrigerator when he saw the drawing. The square house, the crooked door, the tree. His face changed. Vince noticed. "Do not say anything," he warned. Sean lifted both hands. "I was not going to." Lily appeared behind him with a blue pencil in her hand. "You can look at it," she said. Sean turned. "Thank you. It's just a house." Sean studied the picture as if it were a map of buried treasure. "Houses matter." Lily seemed to approve of that answer. She returned to the table. Sean lowered his voice. "She is changing the place already." Vince looked toward Lily, bent over another sheet of paper tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "No," he said quietly. "She is showing me what was missing." Sean did not answer. The house settled around them. Pipes clicked in the walls. Wind moved against the windows. Somewhere upstairs, Lily's new room waited with its white walls, her mother's unopened box, and a gray blanket that would be placed at the top of the stairs before midnight. Vince signed the papers Sean brought him. Guardianship, school authorization, medical consent. Each signature felt less like ownership and more like confession. When the last page was done, he capped the pen and looked at his name in black ink. Vincent Patrick Rourke. For years, that name had opened doors, closed mouths, bought silence, invited fear. Now it sat beneath Lily Mercer's name on a document that said he was responsible for her. Not in theory, not in blood alone. In breakfast school shoes, bad nights, legal forms, guarded doors, and the terrible patience of staying. From the kitchen table, Lily looked up. "Mr. Rourke." "Yes, do you have tape?" "For what?" She held up a new drawing. This one had the same house, but now there were two figures standing outside. One tall, one small. They were not holding hands. Not yet. But they stood close enough that the space between them looked intentional. Vince opened a drawer and found tape. Lily placed the drawing on the refrigerator beside the first one. She pressed the corners flat with both palms. Then she stepped back. "There," she said. Vince looked at the two figures. The tall one had dark hair, a black coat, and a straight line for a mouth. The small one wore red. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Outside, clouds gathered again over Boston. The light shifted behind the windows, turning the kitchen silver. Lily picked up her pencil and returned to her chair, already reaching for another blank page. Vince stayed in front of the refrigerator, staring at the proof that something had happened while somewhere deep inside the house, behind all the locks and walls and cameras, the first crack opened in the fortress. The first crack opened quietly. It did not sound like breaking glass or gunfire. It sounded like paper being taped to a refrigerator. It looked like a crooked house drawn in blue pencil with one tall figure and one small figure standing close enough to make the empty space between them feel less empty. Vincent Rourke stood in front of that drawing longer than he meant to. For years, his house had been designed to reveal nothing. Every room had been polished, controlled, useful. Men came and went with quiet voices and careful eyes. Files were opened, decisions were made, threats were answered. Money moved through the city like dark water. Now there were colored pencils and a coffee mug on the kitchen table. Now there was a purple backpack slumped near the stairs. Now there was a child in the house who woke before sunrise and moved as if the floor might blame her for making noise. Lily Mercer did not demand space. She barely took any. That bothered Vince more than if she had screamed, cried, slammed doors, or asked for impossible things. She said thank you for every meal. She folded her pajamas before putting them under her pillow. She asked before opening cabinets. If she dropped something, her whole body went stiff. On the sixth morning, Vince found her kneeling beside the kitchen chair, wiping a few drops of spilled milk from the floor with a paper towel. Her face had gone white. "It's fine," he said. "I'm cleaning it, I can see that. I didn't mean to. It is milk, Lily." She scrubbed harder. Vince crouched beside her, careful not to move too fast. "Look at me." She did, but only because he asked. Nothing happens because of spilled milk in this house. Her eyes searched his face. "Nothing, nothing." She looked back at the floor. "My mom used to say that too." Vince softened. Then she was right. Lily nodded, but she kept wiping until the floor shone. That afternoon, Dr. Maya Ellison came to the house for the first time. She arrived without fuss. A small woman in a dark coat with silver in her black hair and a leather satchel worn soft at the edges. She did not look impressed by the Beacon Hill townhouse. She did not look afraid of Vince either, which made him immediately suspicious. Sean had found her through a private hospital board member who owed him a favor. She worked with children who had survived violent homes, sudden loss custody battles, and the kind of grief adults like to rename as adjustment. Lily met her in the sitting room. Vince stayed near the window, arms folded, watching the way Lily sat on the edge of the couch with both feet tucked beneath her. Dr. Ellison took the armchair across from her and placed a small wooden box on the table. "What's that?" Lily asked. "Things to help people talk when words get tired." Lily considered that. Words get tired all the time. Dr. Ellison opened the box. Inside were small figures, stones-colored cards, a tiny wooden house, a bird, a dog, a key, a boat. Lily touched the bird first. Vince noticed. Of course she touched the bird. Dr. Ellison did not ask Lily to talk about Hannah. She did not ask about death or hospitals or fathers. She let Lily arrange the objects on the table. The house in the middle, the bird on the roof, the key under the couch cushion, the boat turned upside down. When the session ended, Lily went upstairs with the wooden bird still in her hand. Dr. Ellison watched her go. Then she turned to Vince. She is very careful. Vince did not answer. Dr. Ellison closed the box. That is not the same as being calm. I know the difference. Do you? His eyes narrowed. Sean, standing near the doorway, looked at the floor as if suddenly fascinated by it. Dr. Ellison did not flinch. She is performing stability, she said. She has learned that adults are less likely to leave if she becomes easy to keep. Vince felt something tighten behind his ribs. I told her she is staying. I believe you. Then what is the problem? Dr. Ellison's voice stayed gentle, which somehow made it harder to hear. She does not believe the world keeps promises just because adults say them. She believes in patterns. Who comes back? Who notices? Who stays in the room when she becomes inconvenient? Lily's small voice echoed in his memory. My mom said needing things makes people leave. Vince looked toward the staircase. What do I do? It was the first time in years he had asked that question without already knowing the answer. Dr. Ellison picked up her coat. You let her need things, and you do not punish her for it. That night, Vince found Lily sitting at the kitchen table drawing again. The house was different this time. It had 2 windows, smoke from the chimney, a tree with bare branches, a bird above it, wings open. He set a cup of tea in front of her. He had asked Caroline Vance what children drank before bed, and Caroline had laughed again before telling him chamomile if he was planning to become a grandmother. Lily looked at the cup. What is it, tea? Do I have to drink it? No, she picked it up anyway and sniffed it. It smells like grass. That is unfortunate. She took a tiny sip and made a face. Vince sat across from her. The silence rested between them, but it did not feel as cold as before. After a while, Lily asked, Did Dr. Ellison tell you I'm sad? Yes. Are you mad? No, people get tired of sad. Vince leaned forward. I have known sad for a long time. She looked at him. Does it go away? He could have lied. People lied to children because they mistook softness for mercy. No, he said, but it changes shape. Lily stared into the tea. What shape is yours? Vince thought of Hannah's handwriting. The word unknown on a birth certificate, a photograph kept safe by a dying woman. A child in a red coat standing in a room full of armed men. Yours, he said before he could stop himself. Lily did not answer, but her pencil stilled. 2 days later, rain came down hard over Boston. Owen Pike drove them home from school in the black SUV. Vince had not planned to pick Lily up himself, but a meeting had ended early after a city inspector decided he preferred breathing over being difficult. Vince told himself the timing was convenient. He told himself he was not waiting outside the school gates 15 minutes before dismissal. Lily climbed into the back seat with her bird lunchbox against her chest. Did school go well? Vince asked. Yes. That was all she gave him. The car moved through wet streets. Traffic crawled. Wipers swept back and forth with a tired rhythm. The heater hummed softly. Lily watched rain braid itself down the window. Then a song came on the radio. It was nothing special. A woman's voice low and soft singing over guitar. The kind of song that played in grocery stores and waiting rooms and quiet kitchens after midnight. Lily went still. Vince noticed before she made a sound. Her fingers tightened around the lunchbox. Her mouth opened slightly like she had forgotten how to breathe. Then her face folded inward. Not dramatically, not like a child throwing a tantrum. It was smaller than that and worse. The first tear slid down her cheek, then another. She turned toward the window trying to hide it. Lily. She shook her head. The sound that came out of her was not a sob at first. It was a broken breath. Then her whole body trembled and the grief she had been carrying so politely finally found the door. Owen glanced in the rearview mirror. Vince unbuckled his seatbelt. The car was still moving, but slow in traffic. He shifted across the seat and reached for her. For one terrible second, Lily resisted. Her body went stiff, trained by fear, trained by loss. Then she collapsed against him. Vince held her carefully at first, unsure where to put his hands. Then she buried her face in his coat and cried with a force that made him close his eyes. He did not tell her it was all right. It was not. He did not tell her not to cry. She had earned every tear. He just held her while rain ran down the glass and the city blurred around them. Her small hands clutched his lapel. I want Mom, she cried. Vince bowed his head over hers. I know. I want to go home. His throat tightened. I know. I don't know where home is anymore. There was no answer for that, none that was not a lie. So he held her closer. After a long time, her sobs thinned into shuddering breaths. The song ended. Another began. Owen turned the radio off without being asked. Lily stayed pressed against Vince's chest, exhausted and embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Vince looked down at her. For what? For being loud. The words moved through him like a blade. You can be loud. She did not believe him yet. He could feel it in the way she held herself. He rested one hand against the back of her head. "I miss her too," he said. Lily lifted her face. Rainlight moved over her wet cheeks. "You do, yes." Her voice was smaller now. How much Vince looked out at the gray city, at the buildings and traffic and people carrying umbrellas like shields. He thought of Hannah in a clinic doorway. Hannah laughing behind a camera. Hannah vanishing because she loved a child more than she feared loneliness. "Enough that I should have found her," he said. Lily studied him, then lowered her head back against his coat. Neither of them spoke for the rest of the ride. The house felt different when they returned. Not safer, not warmer, just more honest. Lily went upstairs to wash her face. Vince stood in the entryway, rain still on his shoulders, and saw Sean waiting near the study door. One look at Sean's face told him the day was not done. What Sean's voice was low. "Caleb Frost has been asking questions." Vince removed his coat slowly. "What kind, personal?" Vince looked toward the staircase. Sean followed his gaze. "Not about her, not yet. About your schedule, your house, why certain meetings have moved, why you leave early twice a week, why Owen Pike is driving through Brookline." Vince's face emptied. Who told him enough to ask? "We do not know. Find out. I am." Sean stepped closer. "Caleb is not smart, but he is hungry. Hungry men dig because they think every buried thing is treasure." Vince walked into the study. Sean followed. Caleb Frost ran a crew out of South Boston, if run was the right word for a man who mistook noise for leadership. He had money from sports books, stolen cargo, and 2 city council aides too stupid to know blackmail was not loyalty. He had been pushing at Vince's edges for months, taking small bites from territory he should have known better than to touch. Vince had tolerated him because crushing him would create attention. Now Caleb was looking in the wrong direction. Sean closed the study door. "There is another problem." Vince looked at him. "Danny Voss came by this morning with the envelope from East Boston. I know. He saw her." The room changed temperature. Vince did not move. "How?" "She came down the stairs. He was in the foyer. 2 seconds, maybe 3. "What did he do?" "Nothing. That is rarely what men do." Sean's expression said he agreed. Vince walked past him and opened the study door. "Bring him." Danny Voss arrived after Lily had gone to bed. He was 23, too eager, too handsome in the cheap way that made young men think charm could replace discipline. He came into the foyer with his coat collar damp from rain and fear already showing at his throat. Vince stood near the staircase. No guards in sight. That was deliberate. Danny looked around. "Mr. Rourke, the girl you saw this morning." Danny swallowed. "I didn't see anything." Vince watched him. "That is the answer you prepared. Now give me the true one." Danny's eyes flicked toward Sean, who stood in the shadow near the study. "I saw a kid. What kid, I don't know." "Good." Danny exhaled too soon. Vince stepped closer. "You do not know her name. You do not know her face. You do not wonder why she is here. You do not ask Owen. You do not ask the men at the garage. You do not mention a girl in my house to your friends, your girlfriend, your priest, your mother, or God himself." Danny's face drained. "Yes, sir. If her existence travels 1 inch beyond this room, I will not waste time finding out how. I will start with you." Danny nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. Crystal clear." Vince held his gaze. "Is it yes?" The silence stretched until Danny began to tremble. Vince finally looked at Sean. "Put him on a truck to Providence." Danny blinked. Providence Sean opened the front door. "Tonight." Danny did not argue. At least he was not that stupid. When the door closed behind him, Vince remained in the foyer. The house was quiet again, but it was not the same quiet. Now it had teeth. Sean came beside him. "You scared him. I meant to. Scared men talk too." Vince looked at him. "Then make sure he does not." Sean's mouth tightened. "I will handle Danny, but that is not the problem." "Then what is?" Sean looked up the staircase toward Lily's room. You are trying to protect her from the world by hiding her inside yours." Vince said nothing. Sean continued, voice careful but firm. "She needs school, friends, sunlight, stupid birthday parties with bad cake. She needs to complain about homework and get paint on the floor and have someone tell her no without sounding like a sentence. You cannot give her a childhood through locked doors." Vince's eyes sharpened. "You think I do not know that I think you know danger better than you know children." That struck close enough to make Vince turn away. From upstairs came a faint creak. Both men looked up. Lily stood halfway down the staircase in her oversized sleep shirt, one hand on the banister. Her hair was messy from bed. Her face was pale in the low light. Vince's voice softened instantly. "Lily." She looked at Sean, then at Vince. "Are you angry? No." "You sounded angry. I was talking to Sean. That doesn't mean no." Sean glanced at Vince, and for once the older man had the decency to look away. Vince climbed the stairs until he stood 2 steps below her. "Did we wake you? I was already awake. Bad dream." She shrugged, a child's answer when the truth felt too large. He looked toward the top step. The gray blanket was there, folded in its usual place. Lily followed his gaze. "I was going to get it." Vince picked up the blanket and held it out. She took it but did not move. "Is something bad happening?" she asked. Every instinct he had told him to lie, to make the house safe with words, to say no, nothing, go back to bed, but she would hear the lie. Hannah had trained her too well for truth. "There are things I need to fix," he said. "Because of me, no." She stared at him. He corrected himself. "Because of the life I had before you came here." Lily wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. "Is it a scary life?" Vince looked at her small face, serious and tired beneath the stair light. "Yes. Are you scary?" The question did not hurt because it was unfair. It hurt because it was not. Sean stood below them, silent. Vince rested one hand on the banister. "To people who try to hurt what is mine," he said. Lily thought about that. "Am I yours?" Vince's chest tightened. "You are not a thing someone owns. That's not what I meant." He knew. For once he let the silence be honest. "You are my daughter," he said. The words came out low, rough, almost unfamiliar. Lily held the blanket tighter. "Okay, just that. Okay." Then she turned and went back upstairs. Vince watched until her door closed. Sean spoke from below. "That is the first time you said it." Vince did not look at him. "I know." The next morning the house changed again. Not in any way a stranger would notice. The locks still held. The cameras still watched. The windows still reflected a city that would eat weakness if it smelled blood. But Vince moved differently through the rooms. He took calls outside. He sent men away before Lily came downstairs. He removed the pistol hidden beneath the drawer in the kitchen island and locked it in the study safe. Then he removed the one from the entry table, then the one from the laundry room cabinet. Sean watched from the doorway. "You forgot the one behind the wine rack." Vince gave him a look. "I did not forget." By noon the house was still a fortress, but for the first time it was trying to become something else. That afternoon Lily came home from school with a drawing folded in her backpack. She did not show Vince right away. She waited until after dinner, until the plates were cleared and the kitchen had settled into that blue hour between day and night. Then she taped it to the refrigerator. It was the house again. This time the tall figure and the small figure were standing on the porch. Between them was a bird with open wings. Vince looked at the picture. "What is the bird doing?" Lily stood beside him, watching. "Why, to make sure nobody leaves." He felt the answer settle in him. Outside, Boston moved toward night. Cars hissed over wet pavement. Somewhere far off, a siren rose and faded. Men were asking questions they should not ask. A rival was digging for a weakness. A young soldier was being driven out of the city with fear in his mouth. Inside the kitchen, Lily reached for another magnet and pressed the corner of the paper flat. Vince stood beside her close enough that their shadows touched on the refrigerator door. For once, he did not step away. That was how the change began to show itself, not in speeches, not in promises, but in the quiet decision to remain standing beside Lily while their shadows touched on the refrigerator door. Vincent Rourke had spent most of his life mastering distance. Distance kept men afraid. Distance kept enemies guessing. Distance kept grief from finding a clean place to enter. Lily had no respect for distance. She did not break it loudly. She did not rush into his arms or demand stories from him. She simply existed near him with her pencils, her careful questions, her gray blanket, and the soft patience of a child waiting to see whether the world would hurt her again. By January, the house had learned her rhythm. She woke early. She drank orange juice from the smallest glass in the cabinet. She read bird books at the kitchen table with one knee tucked beneath her. She left drawings in unexpected places. A robin taped to the inside of the pantry door, a crooked moon on Sean's folder, a tiny house on a yellow sticky note placed beside Vince's coffee cup. The house was still guarded, still wired, still watched by cameras hidden in dark corners, but it had begun to breathe. One Saturday morning, snow fell over Boston in soft, slow sheets. Vince had been awake since 4 handling a problem at the docks that had required 3 calls. 2 threats and 1 silence long enough to make a grown man reconsider his future. By 7 he was in the kitchen wearing dark pants and a white undershirt sleeves pushed up to his elbows trying to understand pancake batter. Lily sat on the counter with a blanket around her shoulders watching him pour too much milk into a bowl. "That looks wrong," she said. "It is not wrong. It is very wet. It is batter. It is soup." Vince looked down into the bowl. She was right. He reached for the box again and added more mix. Powder rose in a pale cloud and dusted the counter. Lily covered her mouth, but her eyes smiled. "You can laugh," he said. "I'm not laughing. You are trying not to." "That's different." He stirred harder than necessary. The kitchen light was soft. Snow brightened the windows. For a moment the morning felt ordinary enough to be dangerous. Vince turned toward the stove, and Lily's eyes moved to his arms. He knew the instant she noticed. The scars were not hidden by the undershirt. Some were pale and thin old knife lines across his forearm. One jagged mark curved near his shoulder, disappearing beneath the cotton. Another crossed the lower part of his collarbone, white against skin. Lily stopped swinging her feet. "Do they hurt?" Vince set the spoon down. "Not anymore." "How did you get them?" He had expected this question from the first morning she came into his house. He had prepared answers, clean ones, simple ones. Lies polished smooth enough for a child to hold. A car accident, a bad fall, old sports injuries. But Lily was looking at him with Hannah's eyes steady and too knowing, and all the lies died before reaching his mouth. "Some came from fights," he said. Lily looked at the scar near his shoulder. "Did you win most of the time?" "And when you didn't," Vince turned the burner lower, though the pan was not hot yet. "Those were the ones that taught me the most." She absorbed that. Then she pushed up her own sleeve and showed him a small white line near her elbow. "I got this when I fell off my bike. Mom was teaching me. I went too fast and I hit the curb." Vince leaned closer. She must have been scared. She ran faster than I ever saw her run. Lily touched the scar with one finger. "She cried after I stopped crying." "That sounds like her." Lily looked at him. "You knew her before she was my mom." "Yes. What was she like?" Vince took a breath. No one had asked him that. Not Sean, not Caroline, not Dr. Ellison. They asked what Hannah had done, where she had lived, what papers she had left behind. Nobody asked what she was like when she was alive. "She was stubborn," he said. Lily's mouth twitched. She told the truth even when people did not want it. Especially then. She drank coffee too late at night and complained that she could not sleep. She kept books in every room. She did not like roses because she said they tried too hard. She loved yellow. Lily's face softened. She said yellow made sad rooms remember the sun. Vince looked at her. "She said that to me once, too." For a while, only the sound of snow against glass filled the kitchen. Then Lily asked the question he had been circling since the night she arrived. "Were you bad to her?" The batter dripped from the spoon into the bowl. Vince did not move. Lily's voice stayed small but clear. "I don't mean did you love her, I know you did. I mean were you bad to her?" He turned off the stove. There were questions men could answer with threats, questions they could bury under money, questions they could avoid by leaving the room. This was not one of them. Vince sat on the stool across from her. "No," he said. "Not the way you mean." Lily waited. "But my life scared her. The men around me scared her. The things I would not give up scared her. I thought loving her was enough. It was not." Lily looked down at her hands. Did she leave because of me? The question struck him so hard he nearly stood. No, but she was having me. She left because of me, Vince said, because she knew I could not keep you safe from the world I lived in. Lily was quiet. Outside, a snowplow scraped along the street metal against ice. "Are you still dangerous?" she asked. Vince looked at his daughter sitting on his counter in the snowy kitchen wearing socks with birds on them and grief in her eyes. Yes. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. To me, no. To other people, he looked away for half a second, then back, to people who try to hurt you. Lily nodded slowly, as if the answer made sense in a world that had already taught her too much. Then she pointed at the bowl. "The pancakes are still soup." Vince stared at her. A sound left him before he could stop it. Not quite a laugh, but close enough that Lily smiled. He added more mix. They ate the pancakes anyway. They were too dense in the middle, burned at the edges, and shaped like folded maps. Lily covered hers in syrup and declared them mostly food. Vince accepted the judgment. Later that morning, after Owen took Lily to a supervised art class Dr. Ellison had recommended, Vince went upstairs alone. He entered Lily's room. He did not do that often without permission. It felt like crossing a border. The room had changed since the first night. Her books were stacked on the floor beside the bed. A paper bird hung from the lamp. 3 drawings were taped above the dresser. The stuffed rabbit sat against the pillow, one bent ear tilted forward like it was listening. In the corner was Hannah's box, still unopened. Vince looked at it for a long time. Then he walked downstairs, took his coat, and told no one where he was going. He drove himself north. No driver, no guards, no Sean, no black SUV with reinforced doors. Just Vince behind the wheel of a dark sedan crossing out of Boston while the city thinned into suburbs, then highways, then the white and gray silence of winter roads. He had not driven alone in years. Usually someone else handled the road so he could handle calls, messages, problems, threats. This time his phone stayed face down on the passenger seat. The drive to Vermont took hours. Snow lay heavy along the shoulders. Bare trees reached upward like black veins against the sky. Every mile felt like a sentence he should have served years ago. Hannah Mercer was buried in a small cemetery outside Burlington behind a white church with peeling trim and a bell that looked too old to ring. Vince parked beside the road and sat with both hands on the steering wheel. He did not know what he expected to feel. Anger, maybe. At her. At himself. At the years stolen by silence. But when he stepped into the cold and walked between the rows of stones, what came was quieter than anger. He found her near the back beneath a maple tree stripped bare by winter. Hannah Louise Mercer. Beloved mother. 1989 to 2026. 2 words for the life she had become after him. Beloved mother. Vince stood over the grave with snow gathering on his shoulders. For a long time he said nothing. He had spoken in courtrooms without being charged, at funerals without grieving, across tables from men who wanted him dead. Words had never failed him because he rarely needed them, to be honest. Here in front of Hannah there was no use for anything else. "I did not know," he said. The wind moved lightly through the branches. "I should have." His breath clouded in front of him. "I should have looked longer. I told myself you wanted to be free of me, and maybe you did. But I think I stopped because part of me was relieved you had escaped before I ruined you." He lowered his eyes. "You were pregnant." The word felt like broken glass in his mouth. "You were pregnant and you were alone and you still kept my picture. I do not know whether to thank you or hate you for that." Nothing answered but the wind. Vince knelt slowly. The snow soaked through the knee of his trousers. "She has your eyes," he said, "and your courage. Also your habit of asking questions that make me want to leave the room." His mouth trembled once. "She makes her own sandwiches. She likes birds. She folds blankets like someone twice her age. She apologizes for crying. I hate that. I hate that she learned to do that." His hand rested on the cold top of the stone. "I do not know how to be good, Hannah. You knew that, maybe better than anyone. But I know how to stay. I know how to stand between her and anything coming for her." He closed his eyes. "I do not know if that is enough." When he opened them, he saw something tucked behind the base of the headstone, partly hidden beneath a flat rock. A weatherproof pouch, clear plastic fogged by cold. Vince reached for it. Inside was an envelope. His name was written across the front in Hannah's hand, Vincent. The sight of it nearly took the breath from him. He sat back on his heels. Snow fell between him and the stone. His fingers were numb, but he opened the envelope carefully as if the paper itself could bruise. The letter was dated 3 weeks before her death. Vincent, if you are reading this, then Lily found you, or someone kind found enough courage to send her where I could not. I do not have much strength left, so I will not spend it making excuses. I left because I was pregnant. I left because I was afraid. Not of you in the simple way people are afraid of men with guns, though God knows there were days I was afraid of that too. I was afraid of what your world would do to a child before she had a chance to become herself. You would have loved her. That was never the question. The question was whether love could survive the life around you. I did not know how to ask you to choose without hating myself for it. I did not want to become another person standing in front of you begging you to be someone else, so I made the choice for all of us. Maybe that was cruel. Maybe it was mercy. I still do not know. She is wonderful, Vince. She watches everything. She remembers small kindnesses. She likes birds because they leave and come back, and I think that comforts her. She is braver than I ever wanted her to be. If she is with you, then I ran out of time. Do not love her like something the world owes you. Do not protect her so tightly she cannot breathe. Do not make her pay for the things I feared. Love her like a promise. That is what I am asking. Not because you are safe. Not because you are innocent. Because somewhere beneath all that iron you built around yourself, I once knew a man who wanted to be better and did not know how. Start with her. Hannah. Vince read the letter twice. The second time, the words blurred. He did not sob. Some part of him still did not know how. But his face changed. The cold entered his lungs, and the grief he had held back for 8 years pressed through the cracks Lily had opened. He folded the letter and held it against his mouth. For the first time since he was a boy, Vincent Rourke bowed his head and let silence witness him. When he returned to Boston, the house smelled faintly of tomato soup and pencil shavings. Lily was lying on the living room floor with paper spread around her. Owen stood near the front window, pretending not to watch over her. Sean was in the hall ending a call as Vince entered. Lily looked up. Her eyes went to the snow on his coat. "Where did you go?" Vince removed his gloves slowly. "To see your mother." The pencil slipped from her fingers. Her face changed not with anger, but with the careful fear of someone approaching a door that might open onto pain. "You went to her grave?" "Yes." Lily sat up. Was it pretty? Vince thought of the bare maple, the white church, the snow gathering over Hannah's name. It was quiet. Lily nodded. She liked quiet sometimes, I know. Can I go next time? The question was softer than breath. Vince walked into this room and lowered himself into the chair near her. "Yes, promise." He looked at her, at the little girl Hannah had carried alone and sent back to him with a mark on her wrist and faith he had not earned. "I promise." Lily picked up her pencil again but did not draw. After a moment she said, "Dr. Ellison said I can call people what feels true." Vince's body went still. Lily kept her eyes on the paper. "I don't have to call you Mr. Rourke forever." "No," he said. "You do not." She shaded the roof of the house she was drawing. Her hand moved carefully, though her voice trembled. "I was thinking maybe Vince. That is fine." She nodded. Or maybe something else. The room seemed to narrow around them. Owen looked out the window with sudden intensity. Sean went completely still in the hall. Vince could hear the heat clicking through the old pipes. Could hear Lily's pencil scratching against the page. "What's something else?" he asked. Lily did not look up. "Dad." The word entered the house and changed every room it passed through. Vince felt his hand close around the arm of the chair. Lily rushed on, still not looking at him. "Only if that's okay, I don't have to. I just thought maybe because you said I'm your daughter and because Mom said names should match what people do, not just what papers say." Vince had faced knives without blinking, guns without ducking, betrayal without surprise. This nearly broke him. "You can call me whatever feels true," he said. His voice was steady because he forced it to be. His eyes were not. Lily pressed her pencil harder into the paper. "Okay." A pause. "Okay, Dad." Sean turned away in the hall. Vince looked down at his hands because if he looked at Lily he was not sure what his face would reveal. The moment held. Soft. Terrible. Sacred. Then his phone buzzed. The sound cut through the room like a blade. Vince ignored it. It buzzed again. Sean checked his own phone, and whatever he saw removed every trace of softness from his face. "Vince," he said. Lily looked between them. Vince stood. "Stay here." He walked into the hall. Sean handed him the phone without speaking. On the screen was a photograph. Lily outside her school climbing into Owen's car. Her red coat bright against the winter street. Her face turned slightly toward the camera, unaware. Vince did not breathe. Beneath the photo was a message. "Everyone has a door, Rourke. We found yours." Sean's voice was low. It came through an unregistered number. "Caleb Frost's people were seen near Brookline this afternoon. Danny Voss is missing." Vince looked through the doorway. Lily was still on the floor, pencil in hand, watching him with Hannah's eyes. The father in him wanted to go to her. The man Boston feared wanted blood. For several seconds both stood inside him face to face. Then Lily spoke from the living room. "Dad." The word found him before the rage did. Vince looked at Sean. "Close the house." Sean nodded. Vince stepped back into the living room and knelt in front of Lily. She searched his face, already knowing something had shifted. "Is it bad?" she asked. Vince took the drawing from her hands and set it gently aside. "Yes." "Because of me?" "No." She stared at him. He took her small hands in his. "Because some men think love gives them a place to aim." Lily's fingers tightened around his. "Are we leaving?" Vince looked at her red coat folded over the chair, at the drawings on the refrigerator, at the gray blanket on the stairs, at the house that had only just begun to become a home. Then he looked back at his daughter. "For tonight," he said. Lily nodded once, brave in a way that made him ache. Upstairs, Owen was already moving. Sean's voice dropped into the hard rhythm of orders. Doors locked, phones went dark, cars shifted in the street outside. Vince lifted Lily into his arms. She did not ask him to put her down. Her cheek rested against his shoulder as he carried her toward the back stairs, and for the first time she held on without apologizing for needing him. For the first time she held on without apologizing for needing him. That alone changed the weight of her in Vincent Rourke's arms. Lily was still small, still light enough that he could carry her down the back stairs without effort. But something about the way her fingers gripped his coat made him feel the true size of what had been placed in his hands. Not a secret, not leverage, not a weakness. His daughter. Sean moved ahead of them, one hand inside his jacket, voice low into a secure phone. Owen waited at the rear entrance with the engine already running in the alley. The night outside was sharp with cold. Black ice glazed the pavement, and the narrow strip of sky above the brick buildings looked bruised purple beneath the city glow. Lily lifted her head from Vince's shoulder. "Are we running?" Vince stopped just before the door. He could have told her no. He could have softened it, dressed it in adult words, hidden the teeth inside the truth. But Lily had been lied to enough by frightened kindness. She deserved better than comfort that could not survive the next question. "For now," he said. Her eyes searched his face. Because of the picture, Vince looked over her head at Sean, who was watching the alley through the narrow glass pane beside the door. "Yes." Lily swallowed. "Did I do something wrong?" The question hit him harder than the threat. No. He said it too sharply, and she flinched. Vince lowered his voice. "No, Lily, listen to me. You did nothing wrong. But the bad men saw me. The bad men made a mistake." Her small fingers tightened. "Because they found me?" Vince looked at the little girl in his arms, at the red coat Sean had thrown over her shoulders, at the hair slipping across her cheek, at Hannah's eyes staring back at him through fear. "No," he said. "Because they thought finding you would make me weak." A black sedan rolled to the end of the alley. Its headlights stayed off. Sean's voice hardened. Clear. Vince carried Lily outside. Owen opened the rear door. Vince set her in the back seat and buckled her himself. She did not protest, though her eyes stayed fixed on the mouth of the alley. Vince slid in beside her while Sean took the front passenger seat. The car moved without headlights for half a block before turning onto a wider street, blending into traffic like a dark fish slipping into deep water. Boston passed by in fragments. Wet pavement, street lamps, brownstone steps salted white. A couple laughing under one umbrella outside a restaurant, unaware that somewhere nearby a war had nearly begun over a child with a crescent mark on her wrist. Lily sat very still. Vince kept one hand near hers on the seat, not touching close enough if she reached. After several minutes, she did. Her fingers slipped into his. He closed his hand around them. Sean watched from the front mirror but said nothing. They drove south first, then east, then doubled back twice through narrow streets and service roads. Owen never asked where to go. He had been given the route before the house doors locked. A second car followed for 6 minutes, then disappeared. A third replaced it near the river. By the time they crossed out of the city, Lily's eyelids were heavy. "Where are we going?" she asked. "A house near the water. Do I have to stay there forever?" "No." "Do you?" Vince looked at her. "For tonight, yes." That seemed to matter. Her body relaxed by one small degree. The safe house stood on a quiet stretch near the Massachusetts coast behind a line of winter-bare trees and a private road that looked abandoned unless someone knew where to find the gate. It was smaller than the Beacon Hill townhouse, gray-shingled with storm shutters and a porch facing black water. It smelled faintly of salt old wood and clean sheets. Owen checked the rooms first. Sean checked the windows. Vince carried Lily inside after she fell asleep in the car, her head against his arm, one hand still curled in his sleeve. He laid her in a bedroom upstairs. The room had pale walls, a quilt folded at the end of the bed, and a window looking toward the ocean. It was not hers. Nothing in it was hers. Vince hated that. He took off her shoes and covered her with the quilt. As he turned to leave, Lily stirred. "Dad." He stopped. "I'm here. Don't let them take me." The words came through sleep, soft and broken. Vince sat on the edge of the bed. "They won't." She did not wake fully. "Promise." He looked at her small face in the dim light. "I promise." This time he knew what the promise required. Downstairs, Sean was waiting in the kitchen with the laptop open, 3 phones on the table, and the photograph of Lily printed on plain white paper. Vince walked in and stood over it. Caleb Frost had not just threatened him. He had pointed a camera at Lily. There were men Vince had killed for less, men he had ruined for less. There was a version of him, the one Boston knew best, that would have burned South Boston from the inside out before sunrise. Bodies in cars, warehouses on fire, men dragged from beds while their families screamed. Caleb expected that version. Vince could feel it. The bait had been chosen with care. Show him the girl. Mention the door. Make the father lose control so the boss made a mistake. Sean watched him carefully. "What are you thinking Vince picked up the photograph and folded it once, hiding Lily's face?" "I am thinking he wants noise." "Yes, he wants me angry. You are angry." Vince looked at him. Sean did not lower his eyes. "You are," Sean said, "but you are also thinking. That is better for everyone." Vince set the folded paper down. "Where is Danny still missing?" "Alive, for now we do not know. And Frost at his club in South Boston for the last 2 hours. Too visible. Too comfortable." Vince turned toward the dark window. Beyond the glass, the ocean moved unseen, a heavy sound beneath the wind. "He thinks I will come for him myself." "Yes, I will." Sean's expression tightened. "Vince." But not the way he wants. By morning, Caleb Frost's world began to narrow. It started with money. A union account tied to one of Caleb's shell companies was frozen before breakfast, after an anonymous packet landed on the right desk at the Attorney General's office. By 9, 2 of Caleb's bookmaking locations lost their police protection when recordings of city officials taking cash reached a reporter who had been waiting years to hurt the wrong people for the right reason. At 10:30, a trucking company Caleb used for stolen cargo received a federal inspection. At 11, his favorite council aide resigned without warning and left town with a suitcase. By noon, 3 men who had promised Caleb loyalty stopped answering his calls. Vince did not raise his voice once. He sat at the safe house kitchen table, coffee untouched, phone in hand, moving pieces across the city with the same cold precision he had once used to destroy rivals more directly. Sean stood near the stove, watching him with something like concern. "This is cleaner," Sean said. Vince looked at him. "Cleaner is not the same as clean, no, but there are fewer bodies, for now." Sean stepped closer. "Lily is upstairs eating toast and asking Owen whether seagulls have knees. Keep that in mind." Vince's eyes lifted toward the ceiling. He could hear her faintly. A chair scraping. A soft voice. Owen answering with more seriousness than the question deserved. Do not love her like something the world owes you. Hannah's letter sat folded inside Vince's inner coat pocket. Love her like a promise. Vince breathed once through his nose. Set the meeting, he said. Sean's jaw tightened. We're Pier 14. When tonight? Frost will bring men. So will I. Vince. He turned. Sean held his stare. If you go into that meeting as her father, he can use it. If you go in as the man you were before her, you may lose what she has changed. Vince said nothing. Sean lowered his voice. You need to decide which man walks onto that pier. Upstairs, Lily laughed at something Owen said. It was faint, brief, almost swallowed by the wind outside. Vince looked toward the sound. I already did. That afternoon, Lily found him on the porch. The ocean was steel gray beneath a low sky. Wind pushed at the edges of her red coat. Owen stood at the far end of the porch, close enough to intervene, far enough to pretend he was not listening. Lily climbed onto the bench beside Vince. Mr. Owen says we're safe here. He is right, but you don't look safe. Vince looked at the water. I have a meeting tonight. With the bad men, with the man who made the mistake. She was quiet for a moment. Are you going to hurt him? The question deserved an answer he did not want to give. Vince rested his elbows on his knees. I am going to stop him. That's not the same thing. No, he said, it is not always the same thing. Mom said people can be right and still do wrong things. Vince turned to her. She said that a lot, mostly when I wanted candy for breakfast. Despite himself, he let out a breath that nearly became a laugh. Lily did not smile for long. Will you come back? There it was, the only question that mattered. Vince turned fully toward her. Yes. You can't promise if you don't know. I know. How? Because I have somewhere to come back to. Lily looked at him for a long time. Then she leaned against his side, not hiding, not collapsing, just resting there as if his presence had become a place. Vince stayed still until she was ready to move. Pier 14 smelled of salt, diesel, and rust. By nightfall, fog had crept in from the harbor, softening the edges of cranes and warehouses. Yellow lights burned through the mist. Water slapped against wooden pilings beneath the pier. Caleb Frost arrived with 4 men and a smile he had borrowed from a man too stupid to fear consequences. He was younger than Vince by nearly 10 years, broad-shouldered, sharp-suited with pale hair slicked back and a gold ring on his smallest finger. He stepped from his car like a man entering a room he believed he owned. Vince stood alone beneath a hanging lamp. Sean was somewhere in the fog. So were others. Caleb knew that. Vince knew Caleb knew. That was the point. Caleb spread his hands. Vincent Rourke. I was starting to think fatherhood made you shy. Vince did not react. Caleb's smile widened. Pretty girl. Looks like her mother. The fog moved between them. Vince felt the sentence hit the part of him that wanted blood. He let it hit. He let it pass. Caleb's smile faltered by a fraction. You hear me? I heard you. And then you should have used the information better. Caleb laughed once. I found your weakness. No, Vince said. You found my reason. Something shifted in the dark. Caleb's phone began to ring. Then one of his men's phones. Then another. No one answered at first. Vince watched. Caleb finally looked down at his screen. His expression changed. Vince took one step forward. Your money is frozen. Your warehouses are marked. Your friends in City Hall are suddenly very interested in prison reform because they may need it. The men who told you they would stand behind you are currently trying to remember whether they ever knew your name. Caleb stared at him. You think paperwork scares me? No. From the fog behind Caleb, 2 black cars rolled into view, blocking the exit. Vince's voice stayed quiet, but isolation should. Caleb's men looked at one another. Not loyal men, paid men. Paid men could count. Caleb's smile vanished. You won't touch me here. Vince stepped close enough for Caleb to see his eyes. I could. The harbor wind moved through the silence. But my daughter is asleep in a house by the water, Vince said. And I told her I was coming back. Caleb swallowed. Vince leaned in slightly. So, listen carefully. You will leave Boston tonight. You will give Sean every name attached to the photograph. The man who took it. The man who sent it, the man who carried it. If one name is missing, I come back as the man you were hoping to meet. Caleb tried to recover his pride. And if I say no, Vince looked at him with absolute calm. Then you become the lesson other men tell in whispers. For once, Caleb Frost understood the room he was in. By midnight, names began arriving. By 2 in the morning, Danny Voss was found alive in the basement of a closed bar in South Boston, beaten, terrified, and very willing to explain how Caleb's men had grabbed him after he bragged to the wrong woman about seeing something interesting at Rourke's house. Vince did not see Danny personally. That was new. Sean handled it. At dawn, Vince returned to the safe house. The sky over the water was pale and bruised. He entered quietly, expecting Lily to be asleep. Instead, he found her sitting at the kitchen table in pajamas, hair messy, a piece of toast untouched in front of her. Owen stood by the counter. She refused to go back upstairs, Owen said. Lily looked at Vince. You came back. Vince removed his coat. Yes. She slipped from the chair and crossed the kitchen. She did not run. Lily still did very few things without caution. But when she reached him, she put both arms around his waist and pressed her face into his shirt. Vince closed his arms around her. Over her head, Owen looked away. I stopped him, Vince said. Lily's voice was muffled. Did you come back the same? The question emptied the room. Vince looked down at her. No, he said. I think I came back a little different. She nodded against him. Good. They returned to Beacon Hill 2 days later. The house had been searched, cleared, locked, watched, and reinforced. Yet when Lily stepped through the front door, she did not look at the cameras or the new guards posted discreetly down the block. She looked at the refrigerator. Her drawings were still there. The house, the bird, the tall man, the small girl. She walked over and touched the corner of one page as if making sure it had waited for her. Spring came slowly after that. Not all at once. Not like forgiveness. More like thaw. A drip from the roof. Softer light in the mornings. The first brave green in the cracks near the sidewalk. Lily's room changed first. She stood in the doorway one Sunday morning, arms crossed, studying the white walls. I want to paint it. Vince looked up from his coffee. What color? She did not hesitate. Yellow. Of course. At the hardware store, Vince stood beside her in the paint aisle while she examined paint cards with the seriousness of a judge. There were too many yellows. Buttercup, sunbeam, honeycomb, lemon ice, golden hour. Lily chose one called Morning Light. My mom would like that one, she said. Vince looked at the small square of color. Yes, he said, she would. They painted the room that afternoon. Vince taped the edges badly. Lily corrected him. He spilled paint on the drop cloth. Lily got yellow on her elbow. He got yellow in his hair when she leaned too far with the roller and gasped like she had committed a felony. Vince touched the streak on his hair. Lily stared at him. Then she laughed. Not the small, polite laugh she used when adults tried too hard. Not the careful one that asked permission before existing. This laugh burst out of her whole body. It filled the room. It struck him so hard he had to look away. Hannah had laughed like that once years ago in a Cambridge kitchen while rain hit the windows, and Vince stood there not knowing he was happy until the moment had already become memory. Lily kept laughing until she had to sit on the floor. Vince stood in the middle of the yellow room, paint on his hands, his shirt, his hair, and felt the house shift around him again. Not a fortress, not yet a normal home, but something warmer than survival. The following week, Lily brought home a flyer from school. Family art morning, Friday at 9. She left it on the kitchen counter and said nothing. That silence hurt more than asking would have. Vince picked it up. You have school Friday? Yes. What is this? People can come. They don't have to. People, not fathers, not parents, people. His phone buzzed on the counter. Sean, urgent meeting. Frost's remaining men are moving assets. Vince read the message. Then he looked at Lily, who was pretending to organize her pencils by length. He typed back, handle it. Sean replied almost immediately. This matters. Vince looked at the flyer again, at the word family printed in bright blue letters across the top. So does she. He set the phone face down. On Friday morning, Vincent Rourke sat in a classroom chair too small for him, surrounded by paper glue sticks, washable markers, and children who stared at him with open curiosity. Lily sat beside him, cheeks pink, trying not to smile too much. Her teacher asked each child to present their drawing. When Lily's turn came, she stood and held up a sheet of white paper. The drawing showed a yellow house, a little girl in a red coat, a tall man in a dark suit, and above them in the corner of the sky a woman colored in yellow smiling down like sunlight. At the bottom in Lily's careful handwriting were 2 words: My family. Vince stared at the paper. He had spent years making sure his name meant power, making sure men remembered it with fear, making sure every room knew when he entered. Now a 7-year-old girl had written him into a family with uneven letters and yellow crayon. His throat tightened. Lily sat down beside him. Is it okay? She whispered. Vince looked at her. It is perfect. She smiled, then shy and bright. That evening the Beacon Hill house was quiet in a different way. Lily fell asleep on the couch with her head against Vince's arm, exhausted from school and painting and a week of being safer than she had been before. The television played silently across the room. Her yellow room upstairs smelled faintly of fresh paint. The gray blanket lay folded at the top of the stairs, though she needed it less often now. Vince's phone buzzed once, then again. He did not reach for it. Lily's hand found his sleeve in her sleep and held on. Outside, Boston moved through the night. Men lied, money shifted, enemies waited. The city remained what it had always been, hungry and beautiful and dangerous. But inside the old brick house, beneath cameras and locks and walls built by a man who had trusted nothing, Vincent Rourke sat perfectly still so he would not wake his daughter. He thought of Hannah's letter, love her like a promise. He looked at Lily, sleeping against him, her breathing soft, her small fingers curled in his sleeve. For most of his life, Vince had been feared. For the first time, he wanted something harder. He wanted to be worthy. On the refrigerator, beneath the drawings of houses and birds and a tall man learning how to stand closer, Lily had taped the picture from school. My family. And for Vincent Rourke, that was the only proof that mattered.